Good evening. I'm Howie Hawkins, and I'm here with Angela Walker. We were the Green Party ticket for president and vice president in 2020. We're trying to build a green socialist movement. And today we're talking about the serious issues of rape culture, patriarchy, and capitalism. And what I want to spend a couple minutes talking about is what we're all watching right now unfold before our eyes in New York State with Andrew Cuomo, who I've run against 3 times. I've debated him on TV. And what I think we see here is what happens when you have too much power, you get corruption, and you get, in many cases, sexual harassment and assault. They all kind of fit together. But Cuomo's just the latest in a long line. New York seems to have a deep bench of these kind of politicians. You may remember Eliot Spitzer, who was Attorney General after Andrew Cuomo and had so much hubris that he was paying for his prostitutes on his credit card, which any lawyer, any dummy would know is a paper trail to get caught. But he just, in that power vacuum, didn't really think. And he had to resign when that became known. And then his successor, a man named Eric Schneiderman. 4 women came forward after he'd been in office for a couple years, accusing him of sexual assault and violence. And he had to resign. And though no charges were ever brought against him, he's been out of the picture. And of course, Andrew Cuomo was the Attorney General before Eliot Spitzer. And I say these latest charges of sexual harassment and assault are no surprise because he's long had a reputation for being a bully to his own staff, to politicians, to anybody he sees that might be in his way. When I ran against him in 2010, 2014, and 2018, at events I would run into elected members of the state Senate and Assembly. And a lot of them took me aside and said, I'm voting for you, Andrew Cuomo. And then they tell me the guy's a bully. He doesn't treat people like human beings. And so I'm not surprised at what we've seen. And before these sexual assault charges came up, of course, we had the nursing home scandal. But before that, back in his first term, he formed an ethics commission because there was lots of allegations of campaign finance violations and conflicts of interest with outside income among politicians. So he set up this ethics commission to look into it. But then he shut it down when it started getting too close to home. Now, out of that came, they got the Speaker of the Senate, of the Assembly, Sheldon Silver, for crimes like bribery, extortion, and wire fraud. He's now in prison. Dean Skelos, who was the leader of the Senate, same thing. He went to prison. And the next leader had to resign. His name was Jeffrey Klein, under accusations of sexual assault. It just goes on and on. But then it came back to Andrew Cuomo, his enforcer, a nasty guy in himself. Joe Percoco got caught taking a bribe from the son of Peter Galbraith Kelly Sr. Jr. gave the bribe to grease the wheels to permit a frack gas power plant and some other crimes. Joe Percoco, who Cuomo called when he was his campaign manager, my brother from another mother, he's now in prison. And the senior Peter G. Kelly, he was in that lobbying firm with Paul Manafort and Roger Stone and Lee Atwater that was known as the Torturers Lobby. They also lobbied for the tobacco industry, all the bad players. And at the same time, he was the Democrat in that firm, and they were lobbying for, Mobutu in the Congo and Marcos in the Philippines, you name it. He was also a political advisor, top political advisor to the presidential campaigns of Bill Clinton, Al Gore, and John Kerry. So that's just to say there's a lot of corruption and malfeasance at the top. But when you come back to Cuomo, now the problem is they had a 4-hour meeting of the state assembly yesterday, the Democrats, on what to do with Cuomo. And there was talk of impeaching him. Instead, they're shuttling it off to the Judiciary Committee to do an investigation. What that means is Cuomo's going to stay in power. In New York, if they'd impeached him, he'd had to leave office, or he'd lose his powers for the duration of the impeachment proceedings. And while the Democrats in the assembly are having their meeting, the state chair of the Democratic Party issued a release saying the Judiciary Committee was going to investigate, which means to cover up, the top power structure leaders in the Democratic Party in New York knew what was going on. And unfortunately, the polls show Cuomo still has support. So I will not be surprised if Greens are running against Cuomo again in 2022, despite all these allegations. The one thing that might get Cuomo is the investigation by the current Attorney General, Letitia James, who has had no charges against her and seems to be on the up and up. So we're going to see how that plays out. But, what we're going to talk about tonight is going on right now in New York, and it's going on here a long time. And of course, that's why we're in the Green Party. We want to change all that. So that's what's on my mind. What's on yours, Angela?
A lot. And I was just thinking about, when you mentioned Letitia James, I've heard she's not playing with him. So I'll be interested to see how this all happens. And I've got a few things. I mean, this is like you said, Howie, this is a heavy topic, on a whole bunch of different levels. And one of the things that, I think we think of, and I'm horrible at remembering who said quotes, but the personal is political. And the ways that capitalism, the things that capitalism fosters, the systems of oppression that are fostered under capitalism, including patriarchy, including rape culture, how these things impact us in real time and in the way that we move in our very personal lives. It's no secret that I am a survivor of sexual assault. Yeah. So doing the prep for this was a lot of work for me. So I do want to lift up, which at some point I'm going to find the link for. This is Revolution Podcast. If y'all are not following them, they are amazing. And the discussion that they just posted today was pure fire, and talking about the way that housing, racism and housing, all of the ways that those things have manifested, but focusing on the lack of, or the class, the willingness to leave class out of intraracial discussions, with Black folks, and, uplift and things like that, not talking about class and its relationship to capitalism. Like I said, it was an amazing discussion. So at some point I'm going to find the link to put in the chat so y'all have that. Just going into this, like we said, this is a very weighty topic. The two rock stars that are here with me tonight, here with us, that we are honored to be hosting, Tara Reade and Annika Leonard, who I get the pleasure of introducing. This is a safe space. It is important to us that this is a safe space. And going into this, we want y'all who are joining us. I am anticipating folks who are out there with us tonight. Some of you are survivors. So I'm going to get, we did it last week. We put my debut on TikTok was a trigger warning. So we're going to give you a trigger warning and a content warning now, that we will be discussing sexual assault. We will be discussing rape culture. We will be discussing the way that human beings particularly women, are exploited under these systems of oppression. So if this is a heavy thing for you, as it is, and you need to not be here for this podcast, for this live stream, we completely understand. We want you to take care of yourselves, go ground yourself, get some water, have what supports around you that you need, and sit this one out, because it's hard. Preparing for it was hard. So we just want y'all to know about that. And also, housekeeping. Be aware that we know, we don't need y'all folks in the chat reminding us, we know this, that people who are women, femmes, girls, and folks who are impacted directly by misogyny are not the only people who experience rape culture and sexual assault. We are very aware of that. It is also Women's History Month. So that is what we are focusing on. And when we say women, we are talking about cis women and trans women. So I felt like that needed to be cleared out of the way so we understand one another. And with no further ado, I get the honor of introducing our guest tonight. Our first guest is Tara Reade, who is a writer, a poet, an actor, a former Senate aide, victim advocate, and activist. She is passionate about animal rescue, environmental issues, stopping horse slaughter, and protecting wild horses. I love that. In 1991, she worked as an intern for Congressman Leon Panetta. After working as a field manager for a California congressional campaign, she began working for then U.S. Senator Joseph Biden. She also worked for State Senator Jack O'Connell. In 2019, Reade was one of 7 women who came forward regarding Joe Biden's inappropriate behavior. In 2020, she shared her entire history with Joe Biden. Her first book, Left Out When the Truth Doesn't Fit, is out now. Welcome, Tara.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I'm so honored to be with both of you, all 3 of you. Thank you. And I'm just, I'm super touched. What Howie and you were touching on earlier about rape culture and in particular the Cuomo story, today 2 things happened that were really stunning. It was revealed what Cuomo's team was trying to do to one of the accusers, Lindsay Boylan, who was brave enough to come forward to try to smear her publicly. And that's been revealed. So there's an article about that, about the tactics used. And for me, a wonderful thing happened for a change. Ryan Grimm from The Intercept, was on Rising, and basically went after the New York Times for misreporting and accusing me of lying about my education and credentials, which I did not do. And he basically laid out what happened to me and called out the New York Times for class shaming me. And I'm a survivor of sexual assault, but I'm also a survivor of domestic violence. And I raised my daughter by myself after the parental rights were terminated. They used that, which is unusual because the person who assaulted me is also the author of Violence Against Women Act. So it was very ironic that they weaponized the domestic violence and the class shaming, the fact that I was a single mother, in the New York Times. And it was also discussed how one of the things they highlighted was that I was too poor to afford my law books, so I had to borrow them, as if that was a bad thing. I'm not ashamed of being working class, of struggling, of raising my daughter by myself and achieving a higher education. Capitalism, does not sort out poverty in the marketplace. Okay, it just oppresses. And it creates barriers, frankly, to reporting sexual assault and reporting domestic violence. And one of my team brought to me a statistic that blew me away that I did not know today. 99% of domestic violence survivors, financial abuse was used to oppress them. 99%.
Which is something, which is actually something that I can speak to personally. And before we really into this conversation, let me introduce my next guest, who really ain't a guest. She's a guest on this stream. This is my sister. So, like, you know, we're not blood sisters, we may as well be. Annika Leonard, and wherever she goes, Annika Leonard feels called to create spaces where deep healing can occur, particularly in the lives of Black women, girls, and youth. I can attest to this. On a national level, Anika has participated in the NFL African, Black, and Caribbean Technical Assistance Intensive, the ACE DV Leadership Forum of the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence, and has been consulted with the National Resource Center on Sexual Violence under several projects, including the 2018 SART Protocol and the Sexual Assault Demonstration Initiative, Elevate Uplift. She has provided consultant services to national organizations, I can't talk tonight, such as the Women of Color Network Incorporated, Florida Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and the International Association of Human Values. Anika has also served as the chair of the Milwaukee Commission on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault, where her organization, Priceless Insight LLC, operates as a sexual assault service provider in the city of Milwaukee. I am so geeked to have you here and be able to introduce you to my people. Anika, take the floor.
Well, yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, and just hearing Howie and Tara, I haven't even had the chance to look outside of what's been going on in my immediate vicinity to even, know that there's something even bigger than what feels so very urgent right here and right now with people that I'm connected to. So I was just reflecting like, wow, it's just so heavy. It is so heavy. Just to mimic what you were saying earlier, Angela, like it's hard to kind of prepare for these conversations, and particularly today, it was kind of hard to prepare for it. But I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to be able to speak about my experiences and to have the expressed authorization to share whatever information that I can about and with in concert with some of the young people that I've assisted over the years or who've assisted me, to be honest. So I'm honored to be here and to be a part of the space and to lift their voices up when they're not here and make room for them to come. So
I am so overjoyed. And also for our green family in the chat, my darlings, there are some links that we're going to share as far as sexual assault resources. If y'all have resources that you want to share, things that may be local to where you are, organizations that you know are trustworthy, doing good work, counselors that you'd like to recommend, put those in the chat as well. Make it we community around here, so make it a community resource, because you never know who in this room is going to need that. So, and we don't presume to know everything. So, for all of our fam that are here, if you got links that you want to share in the chat as far as resources, hotlines, counselors that you trust, coping mechanisms that you have used yourself, anything that you would like to throw in the pot and share, we need those. And I love you for it. So I'm going to keep it real simple. And Howie, if you've got, I know you can probably because you dig a little bit deeper into certain things than I do. But I kept it really simple as far as the framing, because a lot of times we use, we talk about patriarchy, we talk about rape culture, we talk about capitalism and systems of oppression, but a whole lot of folks may know how these things feel, but not necessarily have the language for them. And so when we're talking, and Tara, I'll start with you. When we're talking about patriarchy, what are we talking about?
Well, my experience coming up, in the 90s and then to now, what's stunning me is that nothing's fundamentally changed as far as like the top-down culture, the patriarchal, controlling, male-centered culture. And one of the things that comes up a lot for sexual assault survivors, one of the first defenses is, well, you could ruin a man's career. Well, I saw a couple of tweets that had all the pictures of people who've been accused of harassment lately, and they have not, it's not affected their careers at all. Well, and as you know, Joe Biden, it didn't affect his campaign. I think he had one interview with his friend, Mika, and otherwise he's never been asked. And he's president of the United States. Kavanaugh, as went to the Supreme Court. So it's just very male-centered in that sense. Now, rape crosses all socioeconomic gender lines, right? But I'm just speaking to the patriarchy right now. So.
No, I think that, it was a really important point that you just made, because there was something I was listening to today that talked about that specific thing. And I thought about you, about how, people in power seem to hold their positions. They don't lose anything. Mm-mm. While someone who has the courage to, finally step forward with all of the things that come with that loses everything. Everything. Yep. And so it was, what you just said really resonated with me. And Anika, when we're talking about patriarchy, and I know that you use a term a lot, talking about patriarchal violence. When we're talking about patriarchy, what are we talking about?
Well, I think the way I'll explain it the way that I describe it, in classrooms, because you named it earlier perfectly. It's kind of this thing that we feel, but we don't necessarily have the words for. So if I were to ask, for instance, 10-year-old Anika, like what it meant, it would mean that it's me doing all of these like gender roles and like acting out, what my gender is, so I would typically be playing with a doll and, like doing all of those things. And having males, particularly in the household, being assigned certain roles, but then also not having as much responsibility. And so like, that's what 10-year-old me would be like, I don't like my brother, and that's patriarchy, and not even knowing that that's why I don't like my brother, right? But then we move it on up to maybe a young lady who is going off to college, and there's like, a frat house on campus that, has so many accusations against them. A survivor's brave enough to come forward, and, like they just get slammed, they get victim shamed, they get, like basically they're required to uproot and uplift everything that has gone on around them higher than how they hold themselves. You know what I'm saying? Like it becomes a priority to make sure that everyone else is taken care of. And that's patriarchy, like it when I have to think about whether or not you're going to lose your swim career because you sexually assaulted me. And I'm the victim, so I think there's different levels of responses that I would have based on, who I work with and who I work for, I should say.
Beautifully said. And Oh, Tara, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that it's so interesting that, what Howie said earlier, and I wanted to kind of ask Howie about this, about Cuomo. It reminded me that someone told me about Joe Biden, that they said, well, we know he's the lesser of two evils, but he's strong, right? Like he takes these male positions, the alpha male. And for some reason, sexual assault or sexual dominance, that kind of behavior is seen as alpha, and the bullying and all of it kind of, and as we know, sexual assault is about power and control. So is domestic violence. So I kind of wanted to ask Howie about his feeling, dealing with Cuomo, about that bullying. Did the public like that in their government, in governing? Is that something that attracted them? And how do we move our public perception that being an alpha is a good thing? How do we move away from that?
Yeah, I think the public, a lot of them do like, Cuomo's image of being strong and decisive. He's in charge. When the coronavirus pandemic broke out, he went right on TV. He was on CNN and MSNBC every day sounding like he was in charge, even though we know Assemblyman Kim from Queens, who lost relatives in a nursing home, was complaining from the beginning that you're sending people from the hospital back into these nursing homes with COVID. And then they covered up the statistics, as Letitia James reported about a month ago now. So that's what you get. This people like to think somebody's in charge and getting things done, but then you look at how they use that power, and particularly Cuomo, he's really on the edge. He's more plays to that bullying persona, which you hear a lot of politicians complain about because they've been on the receiving end of it, former staff. But that doesn't resonate so much with the public because Cuomo's got the platform, and he's got, he had more money than Biden did when Biden got the nomination for the Democratic Party in Cuomo's campaign account.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, over $100 million. He has, Wall Street and the real estate industry in New York backing him because he delivers for them. They get what they pay for. So he has the money to advertise his image, and he uses state funds as well. The ribbon cutting ceremonies and all that. So I think most people don't sit back and think, would I like to work for Cuomo? And, then they might have a different perspective. So, most people, they're just sort of taking in the images they get from the TV, and then they go about their business. So, yeah, I think his perceived strength is something a lot of people admire. Now, more are questioning it now, but still, the public opinion polls show majority of New Yorkers want him to stay.
And I think that makes a really big point when we're thinking about, when I'm thinking about how patriarchy works, this idea of this strongman leader and this dominant male person, with this right of, what the ancient Romans called paterfamilias, basically, right or life or death of, whoever's in your household. And, that we have a culture that backs these things up, that, extols this as an ideal and we consume that idea without questioning the fact of, or examining the fact of how it erodes the humanity of people who are pigeonholed into having to act that way. And so it makes me also think of, like, when we're talking about rape culture, as a companion, and y'all can, is it a companion to patriarchy? Is it a subset of patriarchy? Is it its own thing? Anika, what do you think?
I look at it like a recipe. Everything plays its part. And I think it's an extension of it, definitely. It's an extension of it. It's just how it gets enacted. Because there's more than likely a person who, I don't know how to say it. It'll more than likely be a person who's a pedophile who will excuse a pedophile. You know what I mean? Like I kind of jump into that end of it because this is so insidious. I think we're so used to it, we don't even really see what's going on. I'm in Wisconsin and I do a lot of work, as I stated before, around, sexual violence and things of that nature. And so when I work with young people, I like to show them headlines. So I'm always screenshotting. And there are so many cases of teachers sexually assaulting students in Wisconsin. And they're described as inappropriate relationship, or there are all these really cute names for things, and we don't even put two and two together. Wait a minute, so we're sending our children to schools where people are harming them and getting away with it, essentially, because someone feels like they should be able to uphold a system of beliefs that don't benefit all. you know, that actually leaves some of us out here really marginalized and really harmed through all of these ways that the system comes at us. So that's why I say it's an extension, because it kind of, it's like the salt on the wound. Like, yeah, we'll just season it a little more, you know, and
Okay.
already over seasoned. It's my food analogy. I probably should have ate first, but
No, that's about right. And I mean it works because it's not one thing. And I think that, you know, we are trained in this country to think of these concepts of systems as separate. They operate separately. And you can, you know, we got a bad habit of siloing stuff here. And so, Tara, when we're talking about rape culture, and we're, you know, like Anika said, and I think that's the perfect word, it's absolutely insidious, because it permeates into places where you're not really thinking that that's what this is. Even those of us who have experienced it, where it's like, whoa, wait, what? So what are your thoughts on that?
You're hitting it right on the head. I was just, when you said just that, I was thinking about how when I came forward with my full history with Joe Biden, one of the first headlines was manipulative deceptive user was the headline of Politico about me. The attack was right at me. And now, you know, Lindsey Boylan, when she came out about Cuomo, had the same thing. Immediately, they released her personnel records and started shifting through her and attacking her. It's so the person reading the headline isn't seeing, oh, there's a sexual assault accusation here. Oh, this person's a liar that's making this, you know, right. That's the intent. So it's like the subconscious message, you know, accusers really aren't to be believed. You know, and so this authority figure has, because they can afford a public relations machine, they have more power. And so this creates a chilling effect on survivors coming forward, because who wants their whole life rifled through, right? Who wants to be under a microscope and be dissected because you're talking about one of the hardest things to talk about, which is trauma, sexual trauma. And it's already a difficult subject. But then if you're talking about it, about someone who's beloved and who has money and who has power, it's daunting, because they will weaponize everything at their fingertips to make you go away, or, in Biden's words to me directly, to make me nothing. And that's what he did.
Well, I'm going to say he didn't, but we know that he didn't.
Yeah, thank you.
There's a lot I could say to that, but I'm gonna be good. I can be real spicy about that. But that's trash, and that didn't happen. So he ain't capable of that. And so just thinking, and like to go into it a little bit more, like when we talk about Insidious, where are the places that it shows up that, you know, people are not looking about? You know, I'm thinking of the fact that, you know, I'm old, I'm 47. You think of all the movies we grew up watching in the 80s, and right now Revenge of the Nerds pops in my head. And there's a scene where, you know, they go into the security and they install cameras. These girls have no idea that they're being watched. They go and they take their underwear. Mm-hmm. It's like a whole sheaf of movies I can't watch no more.
I know.
Because you watch it now and it's like, whoa, wait, what? When did we think this was cool? And so when we're talking, Anika, about how pervasive rape culture is, what are things that, you know, people, because as you said, and I think both of you touched on this, that we don't, these things show up and we're not looking for it. It's like they're there, but we're not conditioned to look for it.
Yeah, I think it is the moment that you know that you should be seen and not heard. Ooh. Either directly or indirectly, right? Like that's when you learn that your voice doesn't matter. You know, when you're not allowed to express yourself, express how you feel, go through the natural range of emotions. So like adultism is at the root of this. And we don't often have conversations about that because that is a part of it, right? And so learning that other people's needs and comfort mean more. Like you have more value if you're always making sure everyone else is okay, particularly as a person born female, right? That assigned role for us. And then we look into making young people hug and kiss people just because they're adults and another adult said it, but within their own body, they don't feel that safe and they don't feel comfortable, or they just may not want to do it. But we're teaching them, no, we have control over your body and or in some households, young people are required to like cover up when male company comes over, male relatives. That's another piece of it. Like, and even, regulations within schools where girls can't wear tank tops and be distracting to boys and things of that. Like, literally, we have just gone from, and I didn't even mention the stuff that goes on, like the moment that the doctor says it's a girl, I haven't even mentioned any of that yet. We're just at early childhood, it's, so the insidiousness is everywhere. Textbook examples all over social media. You name it, and you got an example of how someone else should tell you who you are, how you should feel about who you are, and what your place is. Because that's really what it boils down to. And you need to stay in your place so that I can maintain mine.
Which is capitalism in a nutshell.
And one more thought on that, Angela, because you brought up a good point about the movies. Rose McGowan talks about the cult of Hollywood and just all the unconscious objectifying messages we get through film. And what happened, when I brought up my personal experience of me being dehumanized in the press, just made subhuman almost, just to be ridiculed and to be, ignored. Those are tactics that are subtle, but all part of the patriarchy. And then capitalism is all kind of built into that. It's weapons of oppression, right? To silence and to feed a norm. So it's normalized. So like in the Revenge of the Nerds or whatever, they normalize that activity by putting it on the movie and making it funny, right? Making it a joke. Anyway.
And that it was the quote unquote good guys. When watching this as a kid, these were the good guys. They were the downtrodden. We were on their side.
Right.
And these are the ones that, there's this, and I'm not even going to talk about the moonwalk scene, which anybody that knows nerds, y'all know exactly what I'm talking about, where dude dressed up, she thought it was her boyfriend. It wasn't her boyfriend. Not okay. We don't do that kind of thing. So just thinking about how pervasive those messages are, and just like you just said, Tara, these folk, you don't think because you're associating, these are the good guys. This is okay to do. Right. And how much of this stuff, like you said, Anika, how much of it is normalized?
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, babe?
Oh, so I just had a couple more things that I thought about. So at one point, when Chris Brown was, like there was a lot of spectacle about him abusing Rihanna, singer Rihanna. So there was a restaurant that named a burger the Black and Blue Burger, named after her photo from the assault. So that's insidious, right? Like that they thought that was okay. Around the same time, Snapchat also had a filter where you could get bruises. And I've actually been off of Snapchat since then, because like those two things were so normal that, and oh my God, and don't get me, so media is a whole nother monster within itself, but like the violence that happens against women in like Grand Theft Auto and a lot of, there was a game where you can, so it's craziness out here and it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
And I mean, just thinking, with what happened with Rihanna, you made me think about more recently Meg Thee Stallion, and the fact that she had to, stand up and say, I was shot by somebody I care about, and all y'all can do is drag me or talk smack or make jokes about it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, when we're talking about how pervasive in our culture, this, you know, rape culture, this idea that some people, it's okay to do these things to people. It's okay to take carte blanche to someone else's body or their personhood. These things don't matter to you, you know. It's really pervasive. And how are you? Like, you got something you want to say?
No, I'm just reading the chat.
Oh snap!
Trying to absorb.
I ain't looked over there yet. I know my green fan is out there.
Well,
And so
beast.
and I think would you say that?
I said they mentioned something, someone commented Beauty and the Beast as an example, and that is a good example of just like subtle, like this is normalized, emotional abuse, physical abuse, and then we change him, right? No, you don't change someone like that. Yeah, so Beauty
and I hate
the Disney thing.
But that story, yeah. But how many, when you look at it, how many fairy tales are just really messed up?
Yes.
Have, you know, young girls believing that this is what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Eric. Hey, darling. Outside of calling out other men for unacceptable behavior towards women, what else can we as men do? I love you for this because we are definitely going to talk about that. What else can we as men do to be of help to women who have been sexually assaulted? Anika, you want to take it first?
Yeah, I'll take a swing at it. I think definitely being like having access to your full range of emotions and the ability to model how you know, hold yourself accountable and how you hold them accountable. I think more than anything, we learn by watching other people do, you know, something in that inspires us, you know. So I think that definitely modeling, being emotionally available, like being a person who expresses their more than just anger, I should say, a person who hugs, you know, like I think those are very, very small, but they're also very, very like big things that society teaches you the alpha male does not do, you know, like, because those are things for women who are weaker, and why would we need emotions, you know? And that's like, and that's a broad statement, but just within the context of that, I think just modeling your own self-development and healing journey.
And Tara, what are you thinking?
Well, I was thinking that I'm really grateful to have Howie as an ally. Like, it's good to have male allies, you know? So thank you, Howie, for your work and for speaking out about Cuomo and calling out the behaviors. So calling it out and standing with survivors. And then I kind of want to hand it over to Howie because I want to know, as a politician on a national stage, both you and, you know, Angela have both been on the national stage as politicians. How is it for both of you when you have to call out rape culture with one of the people that you're standing on the stage with?
Well, unfortunately, we weren't on the stage with Biden and Trump.
Oh, yes, I remember.
We were blanked out.
Yes.
So yeah, it's like that tree falling in the forest. Did it make any noise? We were making noise, but nobody heard us. But I think, you know, in answer to the question, yeah, you got to call out the people that try to denigrate women who step forward and say, I was victimized. And you've described that with Biden. You described it, what Cuomo's team is trying to do to the people that come out against him. And we got to call that out and say that's wrong. And listen to these women and, you know, make sure that they are heard. So I think that's what we as men have to do.
I'm looking in the chat too, and Marina K, you know, is reflecting what both of y'all have said. All three of y'all have said, believe survivors. Believe survivors. I think that's one of the biggest things that as far as, you know, what you just said about male allies, that, you know, I remember, and this is a door that I don't open very often. But I remember being told by a male family member who I've had a discussion with about that you could not have been raped. You didn't fall apart. Women who are raped fall apart. You didn't just fall apart. That couldn't have happened to you because you're okay. And what he didn't know is I wasn't okay.
Right.
We hold trauma in our bodies, and these things manifest in many different ways. And yeah, eventually that we had that discussion. But I think that it's very important that that our male allies stand with us. And hey, Tina, hey, boo. Men is saying men also have to examine their ideas on consent and expectations of whether a woman owes them. Lord have mercy. Y'all want to, Anika, we're going to start with you. You want to speak to this, huh?
Wow. Expectations. Consent. A woman owes them. Yeah,
Child.
there's a lot I could say about that. I just wanted to also highlight though, I think we have a spectrum of experiences and conversations happening here. I'm more on the like community-based approach, right? Like working with younger people who are sexually assaulted at the average age of 8 for Black girls. And then like that silence and shame then goes into everything else that they experience. And so I just wanted to just kind of like name that because it
Yes,
feels
please.
our conversations are they are a spectrum, but they definitely all connect, and yeah, these expectations of women, I can't. This has been a traumatic year. And I think that more than anything, those of us who have been quarantined with people who may have not been along their healing journey very long, I mean, here's some stuff and you can't even get out of the house. Like, it's tough. It's tough. Yeah, I can't say anything more substantial than that. We'd be here for a lot longer.
Miss Leo, hey boo. Would a thorough sex education beginning at birth and going forward, be a positive cure/tool in the long run in the attempts of slowing down and preventing rape, giving a vocabulary to people to say no, which I think really touches on what you said earlier, Anika, about children, about how adultism plays into this, and also some things that you were talking about too, Tara. So Tara, go ahead and start it off with this.
That's a big question. As far as, you know what, I'm going to hand this over to Anika because you were just talking about the average age being 8 years old. And I really want to hear your thoughts because, I have talked about complex trauma before. And there's someone in my family that's experienced sexual assault as a child. Anika, could you kind of talk about it, about tools that we can use, on a
excuse me. I think teaching a person to say no it puts the onus on the person, like to even have to say no, right? Like the responsibility should lie in teaching people not to cause sexual harm to whoever. Like we can fill in the blank, right? So that means like removing shame if, for instance, they may have been assaulted as a child and are now, a person who is, and it's not the case all the time, but sometimes people reenact what they've experienced. So sometimes that means removing the shame and giving them space to actually talk about what happened. I think there's like, and I also lean more towards restorative justice and restorative like community building practices, because I don't believe that people should be thrown away. But I'm also very clear that if a person has had a history of harming children or, vulnerable people, I know that I would not feel immediately safe. You know what I mean? So like, I know that there's a wide range of things here, but I would basically say like, we've got to put more on unlearning unhealthy behaviors and learning how we individually respond to traumas, because we're still in positions of power. Like we move in and out of them, like I'm an auntie. So my voice and my opinion matters to my nieces and nephews. So I have a responsibility there to instill what I need to instill, what I feel is important. You know what I mean? I think it can be just as simple as that, like us passing along those pearls of wisdom that we gather, and making sure that we put in some intentional work into to healing from this entire existence and the existence of our ancestors.
You're so right. You're so right. And speaking of which, you know, like the ancestral kind of thing, as far as I was thinking that my grandmother was raped, her mother was raped, and it goes back generations. And you think about 3 out of 5 women are sexually assaulted in the United States. And that's a statistic where it's like reported and adjudicated. And only 1% of cases usually get adjudicated. And I guess I wanted to throw in here, because we kind of, it went past. But one of the defenses that's part of the patriarchal language about rape is to say, what about false reporting? Ooh. And it statistically is so rare. It's 2 to 8%, if that. I mean, and one thing I want to make clear, and Lindsay just posted about this 2 days ago. In her case, someone accused her of trying to get attention. People have actually said that about me. And I just said, nobody wants to be notorious. You know, we're not famous, we're notorious. There's a difference. And nobody wants to lose their housing, their employment, their reputation by coming forward. And it's daunting. And so what I would say is, you know, swinging back to the original question about what we can do from childhood on up, is to empower voices so that the onus isn't necessarily on, it's a false report. And so many times children are questioned, and those cases never even get to move forward. You know, they never see the light of day. And there's a really poignant HBO documentary right now about Dylan Farrow and her journey and being assaulted by someone who's beloved in the movie industry, you know, her father, and how painful it was for her to see him being given accolades, even though people knew that she had come forward, but she was ignored for a long time, until now she's finally been heard. But so many children don't get heard ever.
I think, I'm
yeah.
sorry.
No, that's it. That was it. That was the.
No, this actually links into
Can I say something too?
Here with us tonight, but what y'all are just, she asked me a question, you know, we were texting earlier, and conditions of believability. And yes, and it's something you both have really very much is, you know, what do we think, or, you know, how do these systems of oppression shape the conditions of believability for people who are surviving, you know, these situations? Anika, what do you think?
Yeah. Okay. So I was going to mention earlier, right? So Tara gave a stat about 1 in 3 women being sexually assaulted. And so with Black women, the Department of Justice did a study and learned that 1 in 15 women who were Black reported. Well, for every one person who reported sexual assault, 15 Black women did not report their sexual assault or the sexual assault that occurred. And so I wanted to point that out, because there's so many different layers of vulnerability in that. The layer of being Black, and the descendant of kidnapped and enslaved Africans, and sexual violence being the primary tool which built the economic system. So now we're bringing in capitalism, right? So we have all of those layers, but then we also have this space where we are have a level of privilege by being, you know, like cisgender, like born with the identity that I relate to, right? And so some trans brothers and sisters are not having that same privilege. Like the credibility, when we talk about credibility, it gets even further away from the credible post or the good victim dichotomy, which is also a tool of the patriarchy. But like we get further and further away. And so then we think about bodies that some people may desire, some people may deem undesirable. So folks who are differently able, like it goes further and further away from this, like, okay, well, we can believe you because you're, you know, this size and this skin tone and this age. Like it's, there is no perfect victim, and but like all of these systems interact and engage as if you were the perfect victim, you could somehow get some justice in, and it just always fails. It fails, and it feeds the patriarchal capitalist beast.
Tara, you want to add to that? Because Caitlin, actually, I guess you are here. She sent me her whole thought on that.
Okay.
She said, with respect to rape culture and rape, I think a lot about the conditions of believability, and like part of it that is respectability, and part of it is also, like you just said, Anika, which bodies are seen as able to be violated. And that's one part of the equation, right? Because we like to focus on women a lot. But the flip side of that question is which men, and I think really speaks to what we're talking about with Cuomo and with Biden and with Bill Cosby and how many other people. The flip side of that question is which men are seen as capable of violating and who is protected against that accusation.
Right.
I love y'all so much. So when we're talking about, I got some amazing friends. I'm blessed. Tara, what do you think? And also Howie, as somebody, with the circles that you move in and the things that you've observed when he wouldn't do that. He couldn't do that. She's not even whatever, you know what I'm saying? And the things that come out in these circles, exactly. R. Kelly definitely comes to mind. That's a whole nother story right there. But thinking about which men are seen as capable of violating and who is protected against that accusation. And you basically just talked about that about Cuomo.
Well, in Cuomo's case, he was protected until some women stepped forward, but he's still somewhat protected. As I talked about, the Assembly Democrats met today, and the majority of them apparently are going along with this plan to keep him in power and not impeach him, which would remove him from power during the impeachment proceedings. So they are protecting him, and I don't think it has to do with him so much as they're looking at the polls. They're also looking at where the money comes in politics. And Cuomo's at the center of that. So that's what's in their mind and in their calculations, not so much these women and what they've accused Cuomo of doing and what he may have done.
I don't know, Howie. I think too, it has to do with the fact is if they investigate Cuomo, they're going to have to investigate Biden. And I'm here. And I said that I would go under oath and if they would do a congressional investigation into Biden. So I think that there's enough talk going on with the power elites. And I also think that they're arguing because Cuomo's people are probably saying to Biden's people, hey, you all circled the wagon for Biden. Now circle the wagon for me. I mean, do you see that, Howie, kind of going on?
Yeah, Biden is not speaking out against Cuomo.
Right.
So, yeah, they may be talking. They are former colleagues in the Clinton administration. Well, Cuomo was in the Clinton administration. They are colleagues at the apex of the Democratic Party. And now they have a similar problem. And Cuomo's looking at Biden. If he can do it, I can do it. I think that's all going on.
Anika, what are your thoughts on that? Are you on mute? Got you.
See what I mean? That's why I said I had no thoughts. I'm like blank.
And I mean, I think that just was a really amazing question about, the way when we're talking about patriarchy and the way that capitalism, like, did you say, Vicky Corden just said it in the chat, very wealthy and powerful men get away with all kind of abuses that they do to women. Like that individual who I do not name that just left off, was basically dragged out of office kicking and screaming. The fact that these people's money and power covers them in a way that yeah, you're odious, but you're rich and powerful and you project this persona. So therefore, I'm going to ride with you anyway, even though you've done these really heinous things and all of these people have come out about you.
Yeah.
So I think that when we're talking about making this linkage to capitalism, I think that that's one very, very naked way that we see that happen. Like, yo, he's rich, you know? Hey.
They flank each other because they know something's going to come out about them. So everybody's got to have each other's back, and that's how they keep that system in place.
There it is.
And we got to turn folks' humanities back on, like, because there's no way you can be in touch with your humanity and do and say and behave in a lot of the ways that we're doing, saying and behaving right now, like either on the planet, you know, to Mother Earth, but then also to each other. We've got to get, because we talk about systems so broadly, systems are made of people, and people can be reached. They can be reached. Some of them a little further out, and it may not be my job directly to reach other people, but like they can be reached, and this could be changed. And starting at a policy is not gonna cut it. We got to start at the human, you know, and we can't get in touch with that if we're dehumanizing everybody around us.
Very, very true.
Oh, go ahead.
There's a question up there. I just.
Oh, Ms. Leo, hey boo. How are you able to stay above the media attacks on you when you are trying to heal and the establishment paints you out to be the villain of the narrative? We definitely gonna ask you that one.
I think I know that one. Yeah, I'm still kind of the villain. Yeah, the bad guy. For coming forward, right? The bad person for coming forward, because, you know, what was it? Biden saving the soul of America. Well, he didn't save mine. So what I could say is how I do it is, you know, I want to just stay honest with myself. There are days when I can't deal with media. There are days I can't deal with anyone. And I just take breaks and I work on healing. And I do work with animals, as you know, horses and equine therapy and things like that. So I work on my healing and work on my inner work, spiritual work, which is important. And Anika brought up making sure we don't dehumanize anyone. So even the person that abused me, you know, I try not to think in terms of hatred, even though, you know, I'm human and I'm angry and I've got rage, right, about what happened to me and the way I've been treated. But I'm trying to transform that rage to outrage so that I can provide a healing and transformation for others that are coming behind me, like Lindsay, that's just come behind me about a powerful person, like anyone actually, that's coming forward. And it's been stunning, the betrayals. I found out, you know, as it came up last week, that one of the trolls was paid to troll me. And there were, my daughter had to get a protection order against her father. Her father had paid trolls to smear us. You know, she had a protection order and had to get a permanent one. I mean, so there's been private betrayals and public betrayals, and it's been hard. I haven't processed all that grief, and it's going to take some time. But I think that rather than dwell in it or wallow in it, what I want to do is move the conversation then forward to how do we make accusers not the villains, and not make it a binary story of victimhood or, you know, aggressor victim, but make it more, how can we heal as a community and have an organic way of raising up our brothers and sisters to honor and love each other and not harm each other, I guess, fundamentally.
Anika, I see you nodding your head.
Yeah, because, you know, I believe in that. I believe in that 100%. And Tyra, I also wanted to say that for me, I think as long as I've known myself, I've been a survivor. And so that identity has always been with me. And so what when I think about your experiences and what it means to be in the spotlight and to have your very, humanity questioned and just drugged through, it just it breaks my heart. And I just wanted to just extend that your feelings around like I think that a lot of times people do expect, like a certain emotional response once you've been violated. And I think that it is okay to be upset. It is okay to have days of anger. I think that the full spectrum of emotions are valid, and I just want to say that, and not just to you, but to all of us, even to myself, because even being a childhood survivor and an adult survivor, it still doesn't mean that I don't think about, like what happened and why it happened and the environment that made it more likely to happen, which is, the rape culture that we're talking about. So yeah, Angela, I have a lot of thoughts around that. But mostly I'm really grateful for being a part of this conversation today. And I just thank you all for your time and your great questions.
Yeah.
But I ain't gonna try to hold y'all all night either. We're gonna take Kylie Trenton's question, and then I want to pivot really quickly because we could definitely this is a really multi-layered discussion.
Oh, yeah.
Pivot into, when we're talking about healing, what are we talking about? So hey Kylie, how do you think we can make coming out easier for sexual assault survivors? Either one of y'all.
Well, we can start by not saying crazy stuff when, like, I mean, if you're my relative and the first thing out of your mouth is, well, I know that she didn't get raped because, fill in the blank, insert some crazy rape culture thing, like, or if you're watching this tape that, like is clearly someone who's underage, like there's so many different things that are clues to survivors who are just in your immediate vicinity and household, because that's where I'm talking about, right? Where no, I'm not going to tell you that I experienced this because I hear how you feel. I hear the deep-seated stuff that's coming up in you that's telling me that you're not a safe person because you feel this about them. You must feel this about me. Or you're my uncle, but you hurt women, and I know this. So how do you respect me? It's like there's so many different layers. There's so many different layers. So I always go back to the person. I go back to the person. Like, we got some figuring out to do. That's the best way to put it. We got it. We got some stuff we got to dig out, both within this lifetime, but then also ancestral. Like, we got to do some healing.
I think legislatively, there's things we can do. Howie, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that for people coming out against someone powerful is that and with Title IX, this is with college age as well, defamation suits against the accusers are common now. And so, and the Title IX, like Know Your Nine is a really good organization. That's a good knowyour9.org. They can kind of tell you more, and they have all kinds of studies done. But one of their studies showed that 39% of college students that were sexually assaulted, almost half of their experiences, then their education was affected. They didn't finish, or something happened because of the assault. But the other thing that happened because of DeVos, the woman that left the position is left in place, is the ability for the accused to go after the accusers with defamation suits. That needs to be changed. Because if you don't have the resources, one of the barriers again is resources for attorneys. You have to pay for that. They don't take it on contingency. It's thousands of dollars to try to defend yourself, right? And so legislatively, I think we could look at that for Title IX, to protect college students when they come forward about rape. Another way we can look at legislation is when it's a public figure. I was not a public figure. I mean, I wrote a book now, but I mean, before I was not a public figure. I was private. Just because Joe Biden's public shouldn't have made me unable to protect myself. So, I mean, there's lots of different legislative routes that we could go to protect survivors. So I'd say we mobilize and we do that.
Howie, were you gonna say something?
Well, what I've been thinking is, where are all these Me Too people? You know, when it was Trump, and Trump is really crude. I mean, it was obvious, but where were they, you know, when Tara stepped up? And a lot of them, where are they here in New York with the people that have stepped up against Cuomo? They are playing partisan politics. There was a backlash against what happened to Al Franken. I think a lot of the Me Too people are a bit intimidated by that. And, you know, they need to check themselves and what their principles really are. And if, you know, they believe what they said they believe, they need to step up.
Word.
So what is the Me Too people? Okay. What are we, who are we talking about?
Remember the women's marches after Trump got elected? And
okay, because they're two different things. So Me Too was founded by Tarana Burke.
And got hijacked by Alyssa.
Yeah, to talk about the experiences of Black girls, because we're not talked about. We don't even report, you know, for the most part. It's overgeneralization, but there are a number of reasons why historically, right? So they're two different things, because the Women's March, that was not about all women. That was not inclusive. And where were they, like you said, when it came time to get the other person out of office? So yeah, I just wanted to make that distinction. They're two different things.
I think y'all mean them people with them little hats.
Yeah, yeah. Where I'm not talking about those. Those right. Are not Me Too people.
Anika, do you think the hijacking happened during Kavanaugh? Is that when Alyssa Milano hijacked?
Yeah, the Me Too? I believe so.
Yeah, Rose called her out. Out. Now, Tarana Burke did support me. She came out, but you know, and she made the point that there are no perfect victims, right? They were trying to go after me, but it's been pretty quiet in general afterwards. And I think it's just that frustration, you know, that it got hijacked away from a whole, you know, narrative, you know, from what you were saying, Anika, of the original, you know, the original intent.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I think there was also like the Time's Up, and that was more of the, you know, like the Hollywood kind of, yeah. So I think there were a number of different things that, like you said, got hijacked. But it also, I will just say, and I'll continue to say, that people who reside at the margins of the margins, they don't even have a chance to wonder if a policy is going to be suited to help them eventually, or maybe some of their descendants. Like there's some like life or death sort of situations going on when we think about our trans siblings who are being murdered for their identity, and you know, things that so I think that there are multiple prongs, you know, because some of us don't have faith in policies that have kept us as prisoners of war, to be completely honest. Like some of us don't have faith in that policy change in that direction. And we were never, it was always legal to rape Black people, and we weren't even considered people, you know, so those attitudes and beliefs are still present. And then the more less desirable, according to society standards, you become, the more less likely you are to even report and or be believed, and or be met with anyone in the system who is able to like really excel or exceed us in our healing journey.
We losing your sound, sis.
Sorry. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
That's amazing what you just said. And what you said made me think, if I could add this, Angela, and tell me what you think too about the Violence Against Women Act, which was sponsored by Joe Biden, ironically, which I think he used as cover to get through his crime bill, which did so much harm, as you know. But it created victim defendants, is what the Violence Against Women Act did. It created the ability for police to go in and arrest both parties during a domestic violence call. It created more women being incarcerated than ever before. So it did some good as far as giving money to domestic violence shelters and some certain programs, but the money that went to incarceration type programs, I mean, women's the stats, and I don't have them in front of me, but they almost doubled as far as women being incarcerated than for DV, and race was part of that as well. It just became weaponized. So what are your thoughts on that, Angela and Howie, on that? Because I agree with Anika, legislation isn't always the answer. It can be harmful.
One of the things that makes me think about is a discussion Anika and I had earlier in the week about how, because of capitalism, people are, what was your quote, Anika? Like, we consume because you've been assaulted and there are services you may need, but as you are consuming these services or seeking these services, you're being consumed by them. That there are whole structures that simply exist because of people's pain and their trauma. And you just named them, Tara. I mean, thinking about, how mass incarceration, the system of target, as Professor Dylan Rodriguez puts it, targeted incarceration feeds, all of these systems feed off of the horrible being done to people. And so, like, it's predatory, like in layers of predatory. And Anika, what are you thinking about that?
I'm thinking, like we're fed all of these ideas about, okay, so you're overstressed, take a day at the spa, right? So some people can't take that, afford to take that day at the spa. Some people can't afford to take off work because they don't have health insurance. So instead of us passing policy that says, okay, we're going to give everyone a livable wage, like that obscene, outrageous thing. So the focus really isn't on our mental wellness and our mental well-being or the wellness of, our family and community. It's really on you now needing to consume, go out and purchase services to help you feel better, when the solution could have been to just pay you what you're worth and pay you real money, and that be the self-care that you're able to give yourself. Less work, and you don't have to work as hard. Your labor is not exploited by capitalists, and supported by each individual system, and we can even talk about the nonprofit industrial complex, how like there are all of these community issues, air quotes, that were created by policy, and then the nonprofit is then put in charge of changing said policy, and people, or not really policy, but changing the people in that community when they really need to be changing the policy and, recognizing that they're a part of the problem, like you don't, that is another system of control, whether it is the school systems, whether it is child protective services, whether it is any kind of Medicaid or Medicare, like all of those systems are put in poor communities to police those communities. And then they are, like, so now you have a person who's in this community and they have experienced trauma or not. Like, you don't always have to experience trauma in those communities. They can also be very, very beautiful spaces. But you have all of these systems that basically count on your body, either to fund their district, or to you're counted as 3/5 of a person still because you're in prison, and your vote or your body counts, but your vote doesn't. Like, we have all of these things that we can name, and I could go on and on and on about that. So thank you for asking me my opinion.
No, I needed that. And like I said, I could keep y'all here all night, because like there's like 1,000,008 layers to this discussion that we ain't even hit yet. But I ain't gonna keep y'all here all night. I am, and I know Howie will speak for himself, of course, but I can't thank y'all enough for making time to be here with us. And so very quickly, as we, move towards closing, when we're talking about healing, Tara, what does that look like?
Well, I think for healing, I think we need to do it in a collective way. So by healing rape culture, it's not normalizing violent behavior. It's not uplifting predators and rewarding them for bad behavior. it's really having these discussions like we're having tonight and sorting it out and, you know, reaching out to each other and communicating in a positive way. And one thing, you know, I didn't even get to really chance to say is how important it is for other, you know, women to not participate. Like a lot of my online trolls are unfortunately women. One of the women that went after me is one of the founders of Time's Up, and that's Anita Dunn. She worked for the Joe Biden campaign and was paid $2.2 million in a space of a few months to go after anyone who challenged him. I was one of those challenges, right, that he had to overcome. That's a lot of money to silence someone. So why would she as a woman want to do that? I don't know. You asked earlier about Me Too or any kind of movement. We just can't reduce it. Like Anika was making a good point, and I want to say that echo, like, we don't need any more hashtags. We don't need any more fake kind of, I don't know, because it's Vogue, you're a feminist activist in Hollywood. We don't need any more of that. We need authentic conversations about hard things. I don't think incarceration is always the answer. I think it's needs to be holistic healing. And it's like the alchemy of healing is really about transforming, you know, something bad that's happened into something better and good and educational and reaching out and trying to heal everyone with it. Does that make sense?
Perfect.
I didn't get too esoteric.
No, perfect sense. Yeah. Anika, when we are talking about healing, what are we talking about?
I think we're talking about basically, okay, so for those of you who don't know, I am a real like dig down deep in your roots, look at your ugly toxic behaviors. You know, like me personally, healing means that I am looking at the ways that I show up that may not match my values and the things that I say about myself or the way that I want to be seen. It means like doing that layer of individual work, right? And that extends, you know, to everyone that I encounter because they benefit from that healing. But then it's also things that we can do, like reparations is healing. Decolonizing our thinking is healing. Student loan forgiveness is healing. Like there are so many different layers to healing, and reparations and doing our own individual work are definitely on top, because once we're able to do that, like we could do our work and get our money and decide what we're gonna do from there.
Word. Which, you know, I get to plug, you know, the platform that I voted for, the guy that I voted for.
Mm-hmm.
This platform is supportive of human dignity at its very barest minimum. It is supportive of human dignity. So I've got something that I can stand on with that. All right. Well, how do people find y'all? Tara, how do people find you? Tell the people where to find you.
They can find me on social media, Tara, Reade Alexandra, at Reade Alex for Twitter. And for my website, it's Tara Reade, READE, author.com. So thank you so much, too, for having me. I feel so honored to be with all of you tonight. It was really powerful and in itself healing.
I am so grateful you were here. Anika, tell the people how to find you. And tell them about Denim, Diamonds, and Pearls.
Don't find me, okay? So every year, well, for the past 5 years, I have hosted a event called Denim, Diamonds, and Pearls. And so this event was born out of having young people in the community basically go out and uplift Denim Day in their communities and in their schools with their family, you know, things of that nature. And so Denim, Diamonds, and Pearls, denim stands for awareness, and diamonds is named after a curriculum that I've written that basically provides an analogy for processing like lived experiences for Black girls. So it's called Diamonds Are Forever Priceless. So that's the diamonds part. And then pearls is pearls of wisdom. So we basically encourage young people to, raise awareness, spread education, and then also spread those words of wisdom. So that is April 30th. It is an online event. We, have youth facilitators. It is an amazing opportunity to like basically resist rape culture. The very thing that we've been talking about is like, having youth talk to other youth about the things that they're seeing that's insidious and, like they're making a stand against it. So anytime youth want to raise hell, I'm there with them.
And it's also, for folks who like me are like stuff be soaring past us. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So hence, denim, diamonds, and pearls jumping off then. So, Howie, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, thank you, Tara and Anika, for joining us. I got more awareness. I learned that Me Too, there was a Me Too before the Me Too that I heard about. And when I heard it was Alyssa Milano, I said, what do I remember? Oh, yeah, she tweeted a couple years ago that the Green votes in 2016 were due to Russian hacking. So Alyssa Milano, she's attacked the Green Party before, and she's divorced from reality, apparently, because that's about as much conspiracism as you'd expect from somebody like Donald Trump. So, and then the discussion on the nonprofit industrial complex. I mean, one of the things I think people need to understand is they claim to represent communities. Often they don't live in them. And they set up organizations, they get the grant money, and they pay themselves nice salaries, saying they're serving the community that gets no money. So that's a big problem. It's been going on for about 50 years. A great book on that is how the Ford Foundation co-opted the Black Liberation Movement, called Black Awakening in Capitalist America by Robert L. Allen. Came out in the late 60s. Mm-hmm. And he talked about the Ford Foundation, and that was the nonprofit industrial complex. They experimented on the Black movement and then spread it out to the other movements. So those are just some of the reflections I have about this discussion. And before we sign off, I want to say, like Angela and I do every time, take care of yourself in this pandemic. We got new strains out there, and what's happening in Europe looks like it might happen here. We may get another surge. This strain that apparently is growing is more contagious and more deadly. So people need to just, keep doing the social distancing, the masking, and get your vaccines. And just, take care of yourself, because we want you here at the end of this.
And all I've got to say is just thank you. I did a lot of talking, and I don't normally do that. But thank you, Howie. Thank you to our team that was on troll duty. The boss, Rose, all of y'all that was on it, making sure they didn't get in, because I saw nothing I didn't need to see. So they was on it. Thank y'all for doing the work to make this a safe space for two people that I care very much about. Green fam, thank y'all for being here with us. And like Howie said, y'all take care of yourselves. I need to be able to see y'all, in these spaces. So, love y'all.